Welcome to the Shiny Headed Historian. Today we're going to take a closer look at a dark chapter in American history, the Indian boarding school movement. Beginning in the late 19th century, the United States government began to forcibly remove Native American children from their families and communities and place them into boarding schools. These schools were designed to assimilate Native American children into the mainstream American culture by teaching them English, Christianity, and the ways of the white man. This policy had a profound impact on the lives of Native Americans and their communities. And it's important to understand the history and the legacy of the Indian boarding schools. The Indian boarding school movement was a part of a larger policy of forced assimilation that aimed to assimilate Native American communities into mainstream American culture. The government believed that if Native American children were taught the ways of the white man, they'd be more likely to adopt, quote, civilized ways of life and assimilate into American society. The children were taken from their families and communities, often without their parents' consent, and placed into boarding schools where they were forced to abandon their traditional languages and customs. The boarding schools themselves were often harsh and unforgiving places. The children were often punished for speaking their native language or practicing their traditional customs. They were also subject to physical and emotional abuse. Many children were forced to cut their hair and wear Western-style clothing, which was seen as a way to strip them of their cultural identity. The children were also forced to attend Christian religious services, despite many of them following their traditional spiritual practices. The Indian boarding school movement had a profound impact on Native American communities. The forced removal of children from their families and communities resulted in the loss of traditional languages and customs, as well as the breakdown of traditional family structures. Many children never returned to their communities and lost touch with their families and traditional ways of life. The boarding schools also had a significant impact on the mental and emotional well-being of the children, with many of them suffering trauma and intergenerational trauma as a result of their experiences. The Indian boarding school movement was officially ended in the 1930s, but its legacy continues to this day. Many Native American communities are still dealing with the effects of the boarding schools, including the loss of traditional languages and customs, and the breakdown of traditional family structures. However, many Native American communities are also working to preserve their traditional languages and customs to heal from the trauma caused by the boarding schools. That's all for today's episode of the Shiny Headed Historian. We hope you learned something new and meaningful about the Indian boarding school movement. Join us next time as we dive into another interesting topic in history. Thank you for listening.